points of your punch point there. Now, if you wanted to practice that punch point, you could use the loop function to loop a couple of measures before that punch-in point and after. That way you could keep on looping around until you get it right. Let's specify the beginning of our loop and we'll have it start at, say, 3 here.
3.
Great. Press and hold loop and say you want it to loop from that point. Let's go past 3, 4, 5, and that's where we want the end of our loop point. So we'll hit loop or hold loop down, press 2. Now that this is lit, it will just loop around that point.
3, 4, 5. 3, 4, 5. 3, 4, 5.
There are 3 main reasons that you would want to connect up a CD burner like this to your VS2480. First, you can burn your own audio CDs, standard Redbook audio CDs that anybody can play on their CD players. You can also use it to back up the data, all of your projects on your VS2480 onto a data style CD. Then you can also use it just as kind of a dumb CD player to bring in audio from existing CDs. Maybe you want to bring in loops from loop libraries and whatever. This connection is made through SCSI, and if these are the only 2 pieces that are in your SCSI chain, you'll need to terminate them both, and there's details of that in your appendices manual that came with your unit. By the way, if you're going to be creating audio CDs, you need to make sure that the project that you're working on was originally created using a 44.1K sample rate, otherwise you won't be able to burn that onto a CD and keep it all in the digital domain. So let's go ahead and press CDR-W mastering, and you can see we have 3 options. If you have a later operating system than I have here, you may have further options here. The first allows us to master all of our tracks down onto a pair of tracks. Let's turn Mastering Room on, and if we move down here, you can select which tracks you are going to record on. The default is the 16th virtual tracks of tracks 23 and 24. You can mix 24 tracks on your VS2480 and mix them down onto a pair of tracks, normally a pair of virtual tracks on tracks 23 and 24, which means you don't have to sacrifice those 2 tracks. You can mix all 24 tracks down. And this is just like mixing down to a cassette or a DAT, but instead of going outside the machine, you can do that all inside here within the digital realm. If you like, you can insert an effect across the entire mix by selecting Effects, Insert, and pressing Enter. If you go ahead and select an effect and press Enter, you can go through some of the patches from, I think it's 230 to 250. These are mastering toolkit effects that are perfect for mastering different types of music. Once you select one of these guys, you can go back to the mastering room here, and if you select up here, you can decide whether you are going to record this mix down as a standard recording or as a CD disc image. To get a mastered stereo track onto CD, it must be a standard PCM CD image file. And you can make this recording that you're about to make here, that type of file, by having CD record mode set to on. If you leave the CD record mode set to off, then the 2-track recording that you're about to make will be just like any other recording you've had inside the VS. That is, it's only readable within your VS2480. It's actually not able to be read by your CD burner. Now, why would you want to do that? Well, perhaps you had a stock VS2480 here, and you wanted to use your inbuilt effects on mixdown, but then later on you'd like to use those same effects for mastering. You could mix down to 2 tracks with the CDR mode set to off and then remaster those 2 tracks onto, say, virtual tracks, say 15, this time using the effects again for Mastering Toolkit. You could then have the CDR mode set to on so that you could create an image file so that you could burn that out to CD. Bottom line is, if you're confused about this, is that you need to have CDR mode set to on at some stage to actually be able to burn that onto a CD. You can either have that on first up so that you can create a file and burn that straight to CD, or you could postpone that till later by having it set to off and that way you can kind of play around with that resulting stereo file and maybe use the mastering toolkit and then have CDR mode set to on. Is that clear? I mean, the bottom line really is that if you are about to send out a whole bunch of CDs to a bunch of people, it would be worthwhile having that set to on and having that CD image file on your hard disk somewhere, so that way you can just burn CDs straight away. You don't have to convert. If you leave it to off, then every time you want to make a CD for someone, you'll need to convert it and then burn it. That can add a significant amount of time. Once you've recorded a mix down onto a pair of tracks having that CDR mode set to on, you can drop down into the CDR write screen and place a blank CDR in your writer. You can write tracks one at a time if you like, just for your own purposes, but if you're going to send this CD out to a dupe house as a master, I would advise you to have all of your tracks set out in a row and select disk at once. Some duplicators have trouble with the CD images if the laser has been interrupted in the middle of the burning process. So use the disk at once method. Now, once you have all of your tracks in a row, go ahead and create a new project with CDR as the mode and 44.1K as the project type. You can then import those stereo tracks into the new project under the track edit screen. And once you have all of your ducks in a row, just place markers in between those songs to create indexes and go ahead and burn using disk at once. The last screen allows you to use your CD writer as a CD player. We're nearly through, but we should spend just a quick bit of time going through the utility menus. There's a million parameters in here, so we'll gloss over them pretty quickly. But if you need help, consult your owner's manual. Utility, and currently we have 18 screens. First up, system. We have 8 phantom switches for each of the XLRs and some options for the external MB24 meter bridge. The second screen has settings for the IDE drive and your SCSI ID number. You can set up the refresh rate and position for the external VGA display, as well as some options for the mouse and keyboard. Underneath global parameters, we have a bunch of pretty self-explanatory parameters, but there are a couple that we should go over. Shift lock here allows you to have the shift button toggle on and off by selecting on here, or just momentarily if you select once. If you want to use faders instead of the V knobs to adjust aux sends, then select faders right here. Then when you use the aux sends here, you'll be grabbing for the faders instead of these guys. Under parameter 2, there are a number of auto displays that come up when you touch these controls: pan, parameter, or aux knobs. They default to off, but you can have the displays jump to channel view if you'd like. The next setting allows you to decide where the digital clock is coming in, and also some more display options. Under play record, you can set the monitoring option for when you play or record, set up vary pitch, or decide where the solo and mute is patched. You can also set up the scrub and preview lengths from this screen. The MIDI screen lets you set up the out through as either an out or a through, assign a MIDI SysX device ID if you have multiple VS2480s, and you can also set up MIDI machine control on this screen. There are a bunch of parameters underneath sync for you to sync to external clocks. You can set up an offset for timecode and generate sync out of the MIDI jack or RBus. The next couple of screens here are for tempo maps and metronome. You can use the internal metronome, or you can specify a MIDI note number to fire off maybe a cowbell from a connected drum machine. Or if you go underneath pattern edit, there's actually an inbuilt drum machine in here where you can step time and go through and actually create some pretty cool patterns to play along with. Screens 9 through 11 are lists for auto punch, markers, and locators, and we've already seen them before. Let's look at vfader/user here. The assignment up here is the parameter that you can tweak when you select the user parameter. Remember when we used the knob fader assign here, and the first 8 buttons here were for the 8 aux sends? Well, the 9th button here is for user definable. That's the guy up here. Now, the lower parameters here are for when you press Shift, hold Shift down here, and V fader. Then